"Is this the region, this the soil, this the clime?" said then the lost archangel. "This the seat that we must change for heaven, this mournful gloom for that celestial light? Be it so. Farewell, happy fields, where joy forever dwells. Hail, horrors, hail, infernal world, and thou profoundest hell, receive thy new possessor, one who brings a mind not to be changed by place or time. The mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven." Immortal Hulk kicks off with a theological quest that gets to the heart of what this represents. As the work notes, there are places like Mephisto's realm, for example, that seem like hell, certainly. But the idea of actual hell is that it is the absence of God. Not atheism. You have not turned your back on God, but rather God has turned his back on you. That, the work is saying, is where we are, where God is turned away and another is now gazing upon you. The Hulk, standing there with McGee, brings up the question she'd asked. How do I get to be like you? As the Hulk notes darkly, she's not the first to become obsessed with him just because her house got smashed. She retorts that his destruction is tolerated because Dr. Banner is an educated white guy. He gets to let his anger out. The Hulk appreciates the whole thing because the root of it, past arguments about privilege and all of that, is that McGee sees anger as something useful. In other words, if she were to become like him, she wouldn't be ashamed of the anger the way Banner is often ashamed of that manifestation. It ties in then with the reflections on hell, that God turning away is God's anger, allowing us to reap the consequences of our own actions. In other words, Sartre is wrong. Hell is not other people. Hell is being trapped in a box with ourselves. Absorbing Man is feeling pretty awful about what he's unleashed, but soon Puck finds him and is the understanding voice a man can use in hell. Puck notes the nature of Creel's power. Despite the seeming scientific nature of it, this is actually a magic-based power. He'd been granted it by Loki. Having power granted by a god was likely helpful to whatever was trying to open this door so wide. So Puck wants Creel to help close it. The theology shifts as the question becomes about taking God's anger further. Does God have a Hulk? It notes the fact that name usually refers to the hollowed out remnants of a ship, a shell. Shell also being the term that is the opposite of the 10 stages of the Tree of Life in the Kabbalah. Shell also fits what they come across, a hollowed out Rick Jones with no eyes, spewing lines the guy had said in life. Same as McGee's father, who shows up, someone who was broken trying to rebuild after the Hulk passed through. Who else should arrive but Thunderbolt Ross, whom the Hulk thought was still alive? So why he's here is confusing. Is he actually dead, or does death have nothing to do with it? In either case, Ross proceeds to turn into Red Hulk, another example of the Hulk's point. People see him, and some just can't help wanting to be him. But as they tussle, the point for the Hulk is that what he hates about Ross was that he could have been the father that Banner needed. Instead, he insulted him, then hounded him, then became him in order to try and destroy him. The Hulk is Ross's obsession, but that obsession created a void that only the Hulk himself could fill. Banner was left so alone, he had only his own shadow for company. This brings out the worst in the Hulk. He rages, beats on Ross, rips him apart, becoming more primal. This prompts the narrator to return to discussing the Kabbalah some more, that the opposite of the highest point is the one below all, the Thaumiel, leading to the question of whether or not this is that, the hell below all hells. And here is where Banner's father is, judging his son as always. The irony being, as he comments on the monster that he always accused him of being, that the monster is what emerged to replace the absent father. Issue 12 begins with more theological considerations. What is the devil? In Marvel, he's the guy who dissolves your marriage. As I've said before, saying it's a shame that this one decision cast a shadow over Joe Quesada's tenure at Marvel is like saying it's a shame that all of Custer's Civil War victories were overshadowed by one little mistake at Little Bighorn. The narrator says that all evil springs from the devil, we are told, which leads us back to the dysfunctional Brian Banner. We return to Bruce's youth, his father drinking and complaining about a Lego on the floor, only to discover that Bruce is building an educational toy made for a child twice his age while the instructions are still in the box. Brian heaps his scorn at his son, and then when his wife gets upset at him, blames Bruce for her unhappiness. He makes Bruce deconstruct the entire thing, which Bruce does by smashing. This again positions the opposition to God as the Hulk, for if God is the creator, the devil is the breaker apart. We see the Hulk still pounding on Red Hulk's remains. If you followed Incredible, we've been seeing this incarnation that is simultaneously called the Savage Hulk and the Childlike Hulk. The former matches what we saw in our most recent video, the Hulk offering threats, talking of killing, though he doesn't kill human beings. There's nothing childlike about him in that. It's the same we're seeing here, wanting to inflict harm. But then we see the childlike side of him emerge. Not another persona, two aspects of his personality. This Hulk is a contradiction, who wants friends, but doesn't trust. Here he causes such destruction, yet laments that he always hurts. This affects McGee. Keep in mind, this is almost certainly the incarnation that smashed her father's house, this thing she rails at the Devil Hulk over. But confronted with the tear-filled eyes of this child who wants the pain to go away, all thoughts about justice go away. She railed at the Hulk last issue upon seeing her eyeless father, "Who ever cared about you?" and sees what that fact has birthed, someone whose anger keeps the loneliness away. The Devil Hulk is drawn back out, and she notes that Banner is supposed to be out during the day, except the sun is up. So what's the deal? The Hulk doesn't know. It's because we learn that the figure with Brian Banner from the end of last issue is actually Bruce. Brian, like all narcissists, defends his unconscionable behavior. That Bruce's grandfather made clear Brian was not worthy of love. That's why the love of Bruce's mother was so precious, and Brian was so jealous of the idea of someone else having it, even his own son, especially knowing that he himself worked in gamma radiation. This had always been at the heart of the monster accusation, that Bruce was a mutant freak thanks to his own gamma research. However, this point is now expanded. Brian researched gamma, and in so doing theorized about the weirdness of it. Sometimes, like all EM radiation, it acted like a wave or like a particle. But sometimes, on the edges, there was something inexplicable that it was doing. In searching for it, he had a vision of it, searching back. That was when he learned they were having a baby. Brian then blamed Bruce for everything, including murdering Bruce's mother and for killing Brian at one point. Eventually, Brian was sent down here to the lowest hell because the thing he'd glimpsed searching for him, it essentially needs a soul to wear around. That fits with what we had heard previously, remember. That's why Brian was inside Lankowski and then the Hulk, so that now the door can be opened wide in order to enter our world. And here comes the Breaker of Worlds itself, but the Devil Hulk is not concerned. This isn't going to be the Destroyer of Worlds, because that's his agenda. Issue 13 looks back on the discussion of what the Hulk is from a theological standpoint, but quickly gets down to the Breaker of Worlds unleashing monsters upon them. Puck explains to Absorbing Man as they go that the third thing that Brian Banner didn't get was that gamma radiation also had a magical component to it. It was scientific right up until it started doing weird things, like making Hulk and Leader and Sasquatch. And when Banner set off his gamma bomb, He opened a door down to the lowest hell, and something in there can reach through that door. The Rick Jones shell turns into a blue monster, we won't get into why, and starts helping the Hulk fight all the ones being sent against him. Only Creel, he's off to help Banner, as he blames himself for this, absorbing the gamma out of the Hulk to allow all of this to start. He knows who Brian is and is gonna beat the stuffing out of him. Or so Brian thinks. Actually, Creel's plan is to absorb all the gamma to be sent back into the Hulk again. And he gets to beat the stuffing out of Brian, who says the Hulk is the spawn of the devil, the one below all, he says. That frees Banner, who just wants to die. So the Devil Hulk, as we've established, knows that Banner can't take things anymore, needs something more than a shadow, needs someone to watch over him. Things revert back to normal, and Puck offers Creel a chance to join Gamma Flight, seeing as how he had the good sense to know what to do in there. And it's good because McGee plans to leave, at least for a while. Also gone is the Hulk. In fact, the issue closes with Banner placing a call to Betty from a phone booth. Issue 14 goes to the death of Thunderbolt Ross. Spoiler, he'd faked his death using a life model decoy. But as far as the Hulk's circle went, he was dead, and Betty was bothered. This was now the third time there was a funeral for him. When you're on your third funeral, people are less inclined to pay their respects, so Tony Stark essentially was the representative of the hero community, who called him a complicated man. Yeah, to say the least. At the funeral, General Fordian stood up and gives a speech about not giving monsters the slightest inch, not in our homes or even in our hearts. Betty gives him a stink eye that risks burning a hole through him. During the laying to rest, Stark says that Carol Danvers wanted to come just to demand Fordian give some answers, but she wasn't invited. He also lays the blame for what happened on Banner rather than them, which seems rich considering either way he was winding up in a bunch of specimen jars. Betty's not buying it either, following up his jocular offer for a ride on his jet with a reminder he also has a laser that can blow up a town. Betty returns home to find Banner waiting there, actually, so she rushes up and kisses him, but it might have just been show so that she can whisper that they're being watched. During all this, Shadow Base gets the remains of Subject B, which looks like it's at least part of the abomination, and Fordian is dealing with Bushwhacker's deep desire to shoot Banner for what happened with the plunge into hell, even if he has to shoot through Betty, which he does. Despite Fordian making very clear that not only is killing Betty not acceptable, but the sun's down, which means shooting Banner will only bring back the Hulk. And if you shoot Betty like Bushwhacker does, out comes the very angry Hulk. Bushwhacker is convinced that he can handle the Hulk, though, but someone else intervenes at this moment, Doc Samson, leading us to issue 15. One thing I'm struggling with is how much to talk about what came before and how much to hold off on. I got into a lot of the history of the Hulk's personas because they play such an important role here, but contextualizing everything like the weird organization Betty was in, or Rick Jones' Blue Monster, and the stuff with Amadeus Cho, it's going to fill this with too many digressions. So let's just say that Doc Samson here died during some complicated stuff and leave it at that. He was dead. But then he saw a green door, and next thing he knows, he's crawling out of his own grave, none the worse for wear. They tried to figure out why it happened, Nick Fury suggesting maybe he wasn't all the way dead, as that happens with the heroes sometimes. This isn't the Nick Fury that we've talked about elsewhere on account of trying to make him more like the ones that people know from Marvel got really, really complicated. Let's just say it involves the Watcher to show how complicated it is. Anyway, Samson returned and was troubled that he was no longer dead, bothered by not knowing why. And while he knew Banner was having problems, he thought he should get his own head on straight before talking to him. Unfortunately, that's when Bruce was shot in the head with an arrow and killed. Samson stayed away, but when Rick Jones died, he went to see Betty, who wanted to understand what was going on with the reports about the Hulk being back, because she didn't want to believe that he could be back and not reach out to her. But Samson understood, having returned from the dead himself and having that uncertainty. And more than that, wanting to speak to Bruce about it because there was a good chance he might have learned something to help explain all of this. But first, there's dealing with the Savage Hulk that's in control, only less in control because part of his brain is missing and trying to grow back. Finally, Devil Hulk takes over, says what happened to Betty, and explains what happened to Bruce after he died, about the persona that emerged when Hydra revived him, a huge ball of pure rage for his mistreatment at the hands of his friends and Hawkeye. The Devil Hulk assures Samson that the rage thing is locked away where he himself used to be chained up. Here's where we get into the gray area that I mentioned before about the era which may or may not have been retconned by Peter David as being a hallucination by Nightmare. The mention of the time when the serpentine persona that is now seen as the Devil Hulk was trying to take over. The fact that the Devil Hulk himself sees the events as muddled suggests that either interpretation can fit. Banner was worried because the Devil Hulk at the time wanted to get out and destroy the world, which actually is what the Devil Hulk wants to do, though now he frames it as, effectively, humans have so screwed up the place we need to put an end to things before it passes a point of no return. Speaking of which, the Hulk has been leading Samson towards what Samson thought was Betty, but is actually the cemetery. The Hulk had seen the blood after the gunshot, but no Betty. Means she got up afterwards and left, and she can take care of herself, he says. No, the Hulk wants to check on Rick Jones, see if he's still in his grave. Well, surprise, surprise, he is not. Like all the other gamma mutates, you die, you just come right back again. In this arc, we see two things. In the first 3 issues, there is a philosophical and theological consideration of the place of the Hulk in the grand scheme, and the concept of creation and destruction, good and evil, the one above all and the one below all. The Hulk is not just a monster of science, but of something beyond science. He's a manifestation of ideas and a potential tool for the breaker of worlds. It's an interesting approach that Ewing takes in its exploration, and carefully paced. This is a work that trusts its audience to, even if they don't understand, to at least be willing to follow on the journey. Stretching it out as long as it did could have felt slow, but instead, it feels measured. The other point we see, though, is that the Devil Hulk is contextualizing his goals. The Hulk's goal had been to destroy the human world. And it wasn't long ago that he reaffirmed that. When he was battling Wonder Man, he said, quote, "When the game ends, Earth ends with it. No more puny humans, Simon. Just me. Alone. Finally." And that wasn't written by someone else. Al Ewing was one of the 3 authors working on this event. This was the prelude to his Hulk book playing out. The Devil Hulk wanted to see the human race wiped out, just as he wanted to destroy them when he first emerged way back in Incredible Hulk #1. Nothing had changed. Until recently. So what does this now mean? As I said, this is not an alien presence here. This is Bruce Banner's human brain, affected by gamma radiation perhaps, but a human brain nevertheless, with a dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the problem-solving part of the brain, the place where the mind goes when you are confronted with 2 realities that seem irreconcilable. Cognitive dissonance. It's a problem, so you pull out the tool to solve it. In this case, the Hulk has wanted to destroy the human world, but he has realized something about himself. He is not afraid of being a monster, but he is afraid of Bruce Banner seeing him as one. He was the part of Banner that wanted to lash out at the world because of how it hurt him. When the Hulk realized he was the one hurting him, that changed everything. The Hulk has reconciled his goals now. He's going to destroy the world for its own good. This isn't a contradiction. This is evolution. It seems that even the devil may want to save his soul.